1 year ago today was the last time we heard from the Starfield social accounts, tweeting about the 50th anniversary of man landing on the moon with the Apollo 11 mission, which also, hey, fun fact, is now the 51st anniversary of that. Okay, so that was actually yesterday. This video took a bit longer than I expected to finish editing, but it felt like a pretty unique time and a special time to make this video. Also, given that we have the Xbox game event coming later this week. So with this video, I want to make something abundantly clear. It is a speculation heavy video in that there are a lot of concepts or ideas that are maybe going to happen, but maybe also not going to happen. But what I want to do in this one is lay out some of the facts, some of the things that did happen or have happened in the past, or even happening right now, that makes me have this semblance of hope that we could actually hear or see more about Starfield in 2020. And to be clear with that, I do not mean that I think Starfield will release in 2020. At this point, with the way things work, especially on the production side, if Starfield was coming and they had to create all these copies of a game to ship to people, we probably would have heard about it already. But I want to give us some of the factors that make me feel like we could actually see something as far as a trailer, additional teaser, or even some kind of mobile game in 2020. And to be totally clear on this one, the safe bet is still we won't hear about Starfield until E3 2021, but I also think there is at least a 20% chance we hear about it very soon, or at least in 2020 at some point. So you might be asking, okay, well, why on earth, if Starfield is now coming out in 2020, would we hear about it in 2020? And there's a couple of answers, and we'll get into some of the other ones later in this video, but the simple one is Bethesda could perhaps be doing a modified version of their release schedule. For the past few games, we've seen the sequence where at E3 in June, we do get the full reveal and trailer, and then in November, we get the actual release of the game and we could play it. So a very short time span between reveal and release, which is something Bethesda has tended to like. But with Starfield, things are very unique, and we're going to go over what exactly that is. But before we do that, I do want to mention when this exactly could happen, some of the hypothetical dates that we could actually see a Starfield trailer. One of the first ones is just later this week at the Xbox event. Bethesda Game Studios has a very long history with Xbox and actually has been at many Xbox events in the past. In 2018, some of the initial gameplay in one of the trailers for Fallout 76 actually went live at the Xbox event before Bethesda had their full-on Fallout 76 reveal. For Fallout 4, there was exclusive gameplay going through the Museum of Freedom in that intro quest at an Xbox event. This was after the full reveal of Fallout 4, but again, it was an Xbox event exclusive. And throughout nearly all of the promotional material for Bethesda Game Studios' more modern games, you could see them being played with an Xbox controller. In all likelihood, it's a PC using an Xbox controller, so that controller scheme pops up. And even further, when it comes to Oblivion, it was intended to be a launch title for the Xbox. It didn't even release for the PlayStation 3 at the same time, coming out for Xbox and PC first. It also missed the deadline for being a launch title, but that was the intention. And I wanted to put this towards the start of the video because Bethesda Game Studios has had a long history with Xbox, and considering a brand new console's coming out, this will probably be one of the most viewed Xbox showcase events that we've ever had. It seems like there's a decent chance Bethesda recognizes that and could have something there, even if it doesn't end up being Starfield, some other game. I know there's a lot of discussion about how, well, now Bethesda Softworks has this partnership with Sony and even limited time exclusives on the PlayStation, but Bethesda Softworks and Bethesda Game Studios are separate companies. In the past, it was Bethesda Game Studios that had been buddy-buddy with Xbox, and there's no indication that that has come to an end. In fact, just last week, Fallout 76 was added to Xbox Game Pass, so if anything, there's a continued indication that they still do have some kind of partnership or just friendship. Outside of that, we do have Quakecon down the road. Quakecon doesn't tend to be a massive showcase event for Bethesda. They'll typically have some trailers for DLC, or some secondary trailers for future content for already announced games, like a secondary Fallout 4 trailer, a little gameplay, secondary Fallout 76 trailer or gameplay. So if Starfield would be at QuakeCon, if there was going to be a big reveal there, I would highly suspect for them to indicate that first, like a teaser ahead of time, which could be dropping at this Xbox event with a full reveal scheduled for QuakeCon later on. There's also Gamescom later in August, but Bethesda has never really had a major reveal at Gamescom, so that would be a shocker if anything big came out there, and I wouldn't put too much weight into it. But lastly, one that people seem to forget about that I actually think has quite a bit of likelihood behind it, the Game Awards. So all the way back in 2010, Bethesda actually revealed Skyrim at the Game Awards, a full year before it actually came out, and that wasn't due to delays, they just did it a year ahead of time. It was a relatively small teaser, it was quite a production as far as the actual teaser itself goes and portraying it, but the teaser didn't contain a ton of new info, the larger reveals came later on, but I could see Bethesda doing a longer marketing cycle for Starfield, and the Game Awards position towards the end of the year seems like a perfect opportunity to announce that or bring some of those initial trailers. And we also know Todd Howard and Geoff Keighley seem to have a pretty good relationship, as Geoff Keighley has gotten several pretty exclusive interviews with Todd Howard over the past few years, including one where he actually did reveal several details about Starfield. So now that I established when we could hear about Starfield and why exactly I think that's a possibility, why do I think that maybe at one of these we get some kind of trailer? A lot of people probably write this off because Bethesda has done the very typical, again, E3 reveal for a November launch. It's become very familiar. I actually really like that cycle, the short time from announcement or reveal to release, but hypothetically, I could see a shift away from that for several reasons. Starfield just has a lot of unique aspects to it. Right off the bat, Bethesda Game Studios has grown massively since the development of Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was developed by just over 100 people, and we know that back in the summer of 2018, so now 2 years ago, Bethesda had roughly 400 employees, so in just a few years, they quadrupled in size. Now, of course, some of those teams are working on things like the Elder Scrolls Blades, Fallout 76, but still, that is a lot of additional manpower. Even further, Starfield development began after the Fallout 4 DLC launched. The timeline here isn't totally clear, but a bulk of the Maryland and core Bethesda developers finished Fallout 4 and immediately began work on Starfield, then at some point switched to Fallout 76. So even though Fallout 76 is only about to be 2 years old, and you might think that inherently rules out Starfield because Bethesda has touted this 3-year between release rule, it is also important to keep in mind they are way bigger and actually do have additional development time already on Starfield. And it definitely seems like following the release of 76, a lot of people moved off of it onto Starfield, just based off the speed by which we got some of those subsequent post-release updates. We also know that Starfield was playable in 2018. We don't know exactly what that means. I think that phrase in general is pretty dangerous. It can mean playable where there's just not a lot of content, or it could be playable in this sense, where no, there's actually quite a bit you could do. But I do have a feeling at that point, Bethesda could have had a lot done as far as art or just some of the various structures that will appear in Starfield, some of the assets for the game. One of the big reasons being they have now, again, 4 times the staff at the company, but not a need to create a ton of custom content for Fallout 76. As if you walk around Fallout 76, you'll see a lot of Fallout 4 content. I know though, there definitely are new things, in particular with creatures and weapons, there also are a lot of familiar things. So I could see things like ships or space stations for Starfield already having a lot of work done on them in 2018 because there wasn't this requirement to be creating that type of content for Fallout 76. And then another big factor with Starfield is the next gen factor, which for me is one of the driving forces as to why I could consider this trying to launch closer to the release of next gen and not further away from it. Literally since the initial announcement or reveal of this game, we've known that it is intended to be a next gen single player game. But of course, like the playable comment, that's kind of vague. What exactly does that even mean? Fortunately, just 1 month after that original comment was made, Eurogamer asked Todd Howard that very question, where he clarified when they say next gen, they do mean hardware and even software on their side. Going on to say, we're pushing it. We're thinking very, very far in the future, so we're building something that will handle next generation hardware. That's what we're building on right now. That's where our mind is, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't exist on the current systems as well. That was back in 2018, and thus far, we still don't know if Starfield is a next gen exclusive or going to be ported to older systems, but it clearly seems like this is going to be a significant upgrade from what we have right now. Something this game does, whether it just be the visual fidelity or even some of the mechanics it brings to the franchise or even to the engine, will be unique and distinctively next gen. And bringing a next gen launch title is something Bethesda has wanted to do before, as we also saw them go after that mark with the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. The Elder Scrolls Oblivion followed what almost would be an identical timeline to what a lot of more modern Bethesda games have followed, a reveal at E3 with an intended release date in November, and it being almost a launch title on the new Xbox 360, which also came out that year. except it actually got delayed. It got pushed to March in the following year. So to me, this really says that Bethesda clearly has seen the value in being a launch title in the past. Obviously, where Bethesda was then and where it is now is very different, but it still is interesting, and overall, perhaps this wasn't convincing to you in general that a mid or early 2021 release date is plausible. But one of the reasons I keep getting back to this number or this potential date is just how many unique factors there are going with Starfield. There's so many unique things to happen with this game that really haven't happened with Bethesda in the past. We of course do have COVID, which affects things in one way or another. Even further, the development of this was interrupted, with Todd Howard mentioning how to work on Fallout 76, work on Starfield almost came to a halt, despite them massively expanding during the same time. And of course, while all of this is going on, we now have a release of the next gen of consoles. And when you take that all together, it really does make me feel like we could see something different from Bethesda, changing of the norm as to when they release their games. One of the other potential theories with hearing about Starfield in 2020, whether that be at Quakecon, at the Xbox event, or even all the way at the Game Awards, is the fact that it is very unique in a new IP. We don't know anything about Starfield. We don't know about the lore. We don't necessarily know about all of the core gameplay mechanics. There's a lot of givens that you get when you just announce a new Elder Scrolls game or a new Fallout game that you don't get when you announce a totally new IP, and that is very unique for this company. Bethesda Game Studios hasn't released a totally new IP in over 20 years now. And technically speaking, they'd never have had their own new IP. This will be the first time with Starfield. In turn, it's going to come with its own set of unique challenges the company has really never faced. So forgoing that shorter time from teaser or full reveal to launch for something that's longer and allows you to do additional interviews or release additional trailers to build the world out itself could make sense in this instance, especially when you consider the unique timing of several of these events with delays and not having the traditional E3. Another unique theory could be the mobile game theory. I think one way or another, Bethesda is working on a Starfield themed mobile game. In the past, Todd Howard has mentioned how they kind of always just want to be working on mobile games now, similar to how they're always working on AAA games.
And I think we'll always have a mobile game in development, just like we do on the larger AAA console PC side, where we're overlapping stuff. We're doing that on mobile now. I really enjoy it, faster throw, but
we've seen several hirings for mobile game developers. I know though, of course, they do have the Elder Scrolls Blades, and Fallout Shelter still exists, although it's not really getting a ton of new updates right now. I do think there's a pretty high likelihood we see another new mobile game from them at some point, and having a big new IP and having a way to kind of get your fans integrated or hyped for that big new IP, I feel like a mobile game is a good way to introduce them to that. Now, in fairness, this is one of the theories out there. I don't know how much I buy into it, but it definitely is a theory nonetheless, and perhaps it'll resonate more with you than it does with me. Something that does resonate with me and that I do find very interesting is actually around community managers, as we have just recently seen several job listings for community managers from Bethesda, this being technically for Bethesda Softworks, but for their Maryland branch. And even further, one of the head community managers, which previously was very active on Fallout 76, hasn't been super active on Fallout 76. The only other games Bethesda really has that are active right now are the Elder Scrolls Blades, and maybe that's what they're focusing on. But the reason I bring this up is a lot of the community managers for Fallout 76 were hired just after the game was fully revealed at E3, because, you know, that's when you actually get a job for them. We can see this just based off the dates some of these were created as accounts or the announcement was made, and now we're seeing several of these job listings pop up again. Of course, they pop up from time to time. It could just be a big coincidence, but it also could not be. This one's definitely more speculative. In particular, I would keep it as a background detail, but it is interesting. And we also just have the simple factor that despite many people asking Bethesda about when Starfield is coming, they haven't disconfirmed we hear about it this year, which is something they did do last year. Pete Hines in particular constantly gets asked about Starfield, and he has commented on it, more or less saying nothing, but not saying we're not hearing about it this year, which of course, that doesn't inherently mean anything, but it's another crumb to consider. So those are all the reasons I feel like it could have a trailer in 2020 and why I have that 20-25% of hope that we actually see or hear something. But there are also several things that make it so this could not happen. One of the potential big ones, which is kind of out there, but there really haven't been any leaks around Starfield. There have been the typical Reddit or 4chan leaks, but nothing concrete, nothing like we had for Fallout 4 with the entire script leaking ahead of time or other major details in the months leading up until reveal. Now technically speaking, leading up to the reveal of Fallout 76, we didn't really hear anything either. So perhaps after the fairly bad cases of Fallout 4 leaks, Bethesda tightened things down, but it certainly is interesting. Despite how many games are teased or leaked by insiders, even just at this Xbox event, the fact that we've heard nothing about Starfield could be telling. There also is just the course that Bethesda has time and time again mentioned how they do like a short time span in between reveal and release, and they just have been sticking to that November release date. Releasing around the holiday season is clearly proven very fruitful for them. And with the new IP, you definitely want things to be fruitful. It's a lot riskier than just pumping out a new Fallout or Elder Scrolls game. So would that really be the time you don't release in Q4 and you actually try and change things up? It could be something that's a big turnoff considering all the other inherent risks with this game. Although one of the biggest fears I have with Starfield is the potential of not even a 2021 release date. What many viewed as the most likely scenario with Starfield was it was revealed at 2021 E3 for a release date in Q4 of 2021. But then of course, COVID happened. So what if that was the plan from Bethesda, but as a result, the game had to be delayed until early 2022? What if we're correct in thinking that the release date is going to be different, but for the wrong reasons and even in the wrong year? That would be horrible. That would be a very long wait we still have, but I think that is a plausible theory. Even further, with Starfield, Bethesda has to get this one right. After the vitriol we saw around Fallout 76 and this buggy Bethesda reputation, Starfield can't release as a buggy mess. It'll go over way worse than it has ever in the past, especially with this being a new IP and kind of having to prove itself in some regards where Fallout or the Elder Scrolls doesn't. If nothing else, it'll still be a big week for gaming. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some kind of next-gen Fallout 4, better mod support, or even just some better visuals on next-gen systems. Cyberpunk will almost certainly be at the Xbox event, as well as Obsidian's new AAA RPG, and it seems like earlier today it's all but confirmed the Outer Worlds DLC will be there. So either way, hopefully you guys found this video informative. I just wanted to kind of compile my thoughts and theories around why I think there's still hope we could see more of Starfield at some point this year. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think about this? When do we see Starfield revealed? When do we see Starfield release? But until next time, I thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see you all later.
What do you think, boy? Enough to go on?